I got stuff for you.
Holy moly. I need to get some snakes and release them around my house.
But they love eating people. They love eating kids.
These guys are the scientists of the supernatural, lecturers leaving lessons for inquiring laymen. They are applying the scientific method to a world that baffles science. They are the cryptids of the corn.
Every day that you open your mouth,
I know, right?
I'm more convinced that you're abducted by aliens.
No.
And it just stood up. I mean, it just like kept going and going. And she goes, what the?
These are idiots.
I was laughing reading this because I already knew how you would feel.
Idiot. What part of the story fits your balloon?
Well,
This isn't a UFO. But who else has big black wings and red eyes?
Batman.
Well, Mothman.
Oh yeah, Mothman.
Well, everyone, I think we know exactly what it is. So say it all with me. It was the sandhill crane.
Would you try it?
No.
You wouldn't eat it?
No.
Why?
Because they're probably toxic. There'd be a lot of poop in my pants. I've seen a 6-foot alligator go swinging through the air and slam into a tree. Welcome back to Cryptids of the Corn podcast. I am the great and powerful Mr. E.
And I'm J-Clone 29.
Woo! I don't think that's the same J Clone that was in here about 5 minutes ago, but that's fine. You know why I always want to say all powerful, but I'm like, I can't because that's God.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're just great.
Why is that funny?
Is there an echo in here?
Yeah.
Like deja vu.
No, the computer failed about 4 minutes ago, and we're retrying this for the second time.
All right.
We are joined tonight by an international man of mystery. He runs probably the most cryptic occult organization in the world. The people that really decide what's going on behind the curtains. The International Fan Club of Jay and the Clones. Introduce him, my young man.
Well, if you haven't heard his name mentioned on the show yet or in our Cryptids and Coffee show, welcome to the show, Stonebender.
Woo!
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being
It's a
on
pleasure to be
here and putting up with the slow email response.
And our technical malfunctions.
It's working
Wouldn't
good
have
right
it
now.
any other way.
That's right.
No, so yeah, you're going to share some really, really awesome experiences. But before we get rocking and rolling, we're going to talk about you a little bit. Now, we're going to talk about the real Stonebender.
Oh.
No, so
Okay.
kind of tell everybody like what your name's from and what you do, and tell everybody where they can follow your work.
Well, if somebody wants to take out, I'm not certainly not any kind of a researcher or anything like that, but my Instagram is kind of reserved just for pictures of my stonework and a few personal pictures of here and there. But if you look up Stonebender HV, which stands for like Hudson Valley, somebody told me that would help. I live in Kingston, New York here, at the foot of the Catskill Mountains. And yeah, Instagram, it's Stonebender HV, and you can see some pictures and stuff of different things. But basically, you know, I'm a stonemason, so I do stonework. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And quick funny story, just to, how I got my name. I guess I was doing a wall one day, and it was a built wall. It was already built. We built it, and it was a freestanding wall. It was a dry laid wall, which means that there's no mortar used in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to extend it by about, I think it was like 8 feet or something like that. So it's hard to describe, but instead of taking down, you know, a dry laid wall, you can just take apart with your hands. And to extend it, you would have to take apart the top corner of it at an angle, at a 45-degree angle, so you can add more stone to the bottom layer and then the next layer, so you don't have one joint going straight up vertically in your new wall, you know, if you wanted to extend it. And traditionally, you take out a lot of stones to achieve that, to break that seam. and which is really not a big deal. You can do it, pretty quickly. But what I did is I just set up some rebar, so some of the stones on top didn't have to be moved. Some of the big capstones, a lot of these were 6 inches thick. And, it's kind of hard to describe without a visual, but basically, if you see a broken brick or cinder block thing and it's like a jagged kind of missing bricks, going down like the shape of a letter E kind of.
Okay.
Basically, that's what I did. Instead of taking apart a bunch of it, I used rebar to prop up every other course going up. And then I started to add to the wall and built the new wall. And all these nicknames are just funny. But at the time I was working with a guy that his stoneworking nickname was Muffin. And he coined my name by explaining that I just bent it in. I bent the wall in, and I did it. I used some other technique that he never saw before. So they started calling me Stonebender, and
the rest is
I kind
history.
of liked it. So I'm known locally as Stonebender to the handful of people that even know me.
No, there you go.
Oh, and not even locally. I think in our community, there's a handful of people known you as Stonebender.
In your community
International.
too. That's awesome.
There's 115 countries know the name Stonebender.
That's right.
Wow, man.
They're looking for you. Don't let them find you.
Good. I'll be willing to fly. I heard you guys are big in Australia. I'll be willing to, if the price is right, take a trip to Australia and bend some of their stones over there too. No problem.
There you go. So you get that red sandstone and all that pretty stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's the only rock I
Can think of, yeah.
for Australia, because it's the famous rock.
Yeah.
That and the blue mountains, so they're blue.
And all that pretty stuff.
There's tons of pretty stuff. Everything will kill you.
Oh, yeah.
The most poisonous plants on the planet.
And animals.
Yeah, but that's a given. No, so that's awesome. And then for everybody at home, I'll have your Instagram and all that stuff down in the links below. Everybody reach out. If you need stonework done in upstate New York, right? Sorry, cut out. Upstate New York, right? If you need stonework done.
Yep, right around Kingston and the Catskill Mountains,
But like he said, he's willing to come down and work for the right price point. I mean, if anybody in Georgia needs some nice stonework done and you want the man that runs the International J Fan Club to do it, it's
take the mystery out of it.
Check
right.
speak.
All right. There you go.
And if they mention Cryptids of the Corn, you get 15% off. How's that?
There you go.
There you go.
Mention Cryptids of the Corn, you get 15% off. There you go. Do it, everybody.
I was going to say 7.5, but there's 2 of you, so
there you go.
15%.
Fair enough.
There you go. No, so why don't you tell us a little bit maybe about your area, and then we'll kind of get, because I think that'll help get into your encounters.
Right.
Because I don't think
Sure.
a lot of people, I mean, that we're international and stuff, but even in America, a lot of people, when you say the word New York, and we kind of joked about it off air, but you say the word New York, you think of New York City, and that's such a small spot in your state. Your state has so much rural natural beauty and actual mystery to it.
Sure. Yep, I agree. I mean, there's even parts of the state I'm not familiar with out in Western New York. There's a lot of farmland, and I know there's a lot of people that have encounters out there, and that's way far from me to the west. But basically, I grew up in Kingston, New York, which is at the foot of the Catskills. It's about almost 2 hours north of New York City. So we do get some of the influence with people moving up here after, like, let's say a pandemic or something like that. After September, that day in September, there was an influx of people that moved up here. And so the population has definitely grown. And you can tell because, you can tell where people are from because they kind of like try to cut in front of you, or they drive 40 miles an hour through a parking lot. Like they're really just something that important at the grocery store,
Right.
But, you got to love them, man, But I love this area. It's basically the Catskill Mountains are south of the Adirondack Mountains, and they're smaller. And it's a smaller park, the official Catskill Mountain area. And people live in it just like the Adirondacks, And it's just a nice mountainous patch right alongside the west side of the Hudson River. which goes up, of course, to the Great Lakes and everything down in New York City. So, you know, the town, Kingston, is maybe 35,000 people. I live right outside of Kingston, and it's a little more wooded. But essentially, if I were to start somewhere, I would say maybe it had to have been almost 15 years ago. I do enjoy hiking, you know, and I just got back from a camping trip actually today that I took right in that same area where it kind of all began for me, as far as my experiences. And I didn't know, you know, I didn't know anything about the subject of Bigfoot. You know, I remember, as a lot of people have seen the Patterson-Gimlin film, and at that time even, I didn't even know that there was a stabilized version of it. So when I was a kid, I would watch In Search Of, which was a cool show on TV back in the 80s and I guess late 80s. And I was introduced to that footage from that show, but you know, none of this was on. It wasn't a subject that I was interested in at all. There's different things that I'm interested in, but essentially one day, about 40 minutes north of me, you get deeper into the Catskills, and you know, there's less people and everything. And there's this town called Palinville, and anybody around this area would know Palinville. And there's a town called Tannersville right next to it, very small town. And there's Hunter Mountain, which is a big ski area that people are pretty familiar with. A lot of people come up for that. And so essentially between Palinville and Tannersville, it's a stretch, I think it's 23A. There's a stretch of that road that there's nothing on either side. It's all state land on either side. And there's a creek that runs along it. And sometimes the road, you're above the creek, and sometimes you're even higher above it. And then you cross over a bridge, and it's it's a small creek. It's bouldery, and when it gets really wet, it does, you know, get pretty high and floods a little dangerous, you know. But that creek, because I mean, we all know now with this, especially with the subject that we're all into, Sasquatch, that there's areas that are a marked trail. And even though you go to enjoy the wilderness, for the most part, people stay on those trails. And there's other parts of like wilderness areas and mountains on this side or that side where just nobody goes because it's not too convenient to go there. And my whole thing with hiking was always trying to like get away from the masses.
Yeah, right.
You know? And I'm not totally unique like that. Like a lot of people do that. And I hear that people have experiences sometimes when they do that. So anyway, this thing's not on my radar at all. You know, I'm out there hiking and I'm in the creek, and the creek has several ravines that come down into it. And it's just a beautiful ravine coming off the mountain, a few of them. And this part of the creek that I'm in, there's not too many people that really visit that part of the creek, let alone the ravines. So you have your choice of 3 or 4 ravines in the area, the stretch that I go, to go up and explore, you know. And the last ravine, it was on the southern side, I guess, of this area. I've been up there, you know, a few dozen times before this incident happened. This incident was about 15 years ago, and I had been up there before. And every time I had gone up there, I never saw another soul up there at all. And I would get up to the part where it just gets too steep to go any further and just kind of turn around. And there's water, you know, any time of the year, there's at least a little bit of water coming down these ravines. When it's real dry, there's still a little water. And it's it's not a cliff, but it's a steep. You're climbing boulders, and you're making your way through fallen trees, and obviously none of it is maintained or anything like that. So you get to see some cool stuff like a porcupine here and there, and there might be a big bee's nest like on a log close to you, and it's kind of raw. For New York State, it's kind of a raw wilderness area, and so I go mostly up this ravine, and now remember, I'd never heard of any of these experiences that people have with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. I've never heard of I've never heard any encounters. I was open-minded to that it might exist out on the West Coast, maybe, where I've heard people see it. Had no idea about the fact that people see them in every state, Canada, all the different behaviors and stuff. Nothing. So I'm up there just enjoying nature. So I decide that's it for the day. I'm going to turn around, and I decided to turn around. I start going back down, maybe 100 or 200 feet. I'm going down this ravine. It's going to take me probably a good 25 minutes to get to the bottom where the creek is, and then another, if I wanted to go back to my car, another half hour to my car, down a safer creek area in the woods. So I'm still up here, up on this ravine, and it was a beautiful day. I'm pretty healthy, as far as not feeling good all of a sudden or anything like that. And it was bizarre to me because the first thing that I experienced was a feeling of dread from out of nowhere, an overwhelming feeling that I was questioning myself. What am I doing here? What if I trip, twist my ankle? It'd take me forever to get out of here. There's nobody around. And these thoughts to me are like, I'm like, oh, well, they're obviously my thoughts, but it's not anything that I would normally think. And it's a beautiful day. I was feeling great. And so I started thinking, what did I eat this morning? Did I eat something funny? Why am I feeling like this? So I can't say I was completely terrified, but I was questioning myself basically out of the blue.
Right.
Just questioning myself. We'll come back to that. We've heard, what could possibly happen and why one would question themselves out of the blue like that or experience fear. But I had no idea. And so I made my way down the ravine. I go another 20 feet. And I think to myself, Seth, let me sit down for a minute because just in case I get dizzy, I'm not feeling right. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to sit down for about a minute before I continue down these boulders because, it could be slippery, whatever. I just got to watch myself because I don't know why I'm feeling like this. So I sat down on a big boulder, and behind me, I just passed this little pool of water, and behind me, about maybe 15 feet behind me, there was a little pool of water that was maybe 12 inches deep and 6 feet wide and round by about 6 feet. Not much of anything, not anything you could swim in or anything, something you kind of just step around, And so I'm sitting on the boulder, and this is about probably 60 seconds after this feeling, maybe 2 minutes after this just overwhelming sense of fear, questioning myself. I sit down, and I hear a big splash behind me in the water that was obviously a rock because I heard the rock hit something solid underneath the water. And it startled me, it was about 15 feet behind me. And so I turn around and I look and I see the water splashed out on the dry rocks. And, so you can sort of tell which direction the rock came from.
Right.
And it came directly behind me. And I'm looking at it, I walk over, it's only 12, 15 feet away. I get up, I walk over to it. I'm looking at it, and I didn't notice this rock before. I heard it, and there's the water splashed out on the ground, and this stone is about the size. It's bigger than a football, but it's about the shape of a football, and it was black, very round. And mind you, there's no cliff or anything around there. There's walls of the ravine. You know, it goes steeply to the left and to the right, and then up in every direction except when you're going back down. But you know, it was nothing but net. It wasn't a boulder rolling down or falling and coming loose and then landing in the water. It was just seemingly out of the clear blue sky. This boom, it splashes in the water, and so I'm even more scared at that point, because I'm looking at it like, how could this be? You know, how does this happen? I know the woods on the left hand side, on the right hand side. There's never anybody out there. There's no trails out there. And if you were to go up into that area, you wouldn't really take the woods. You know, it's a little easier in the ravine. So, you know, it's just dead silence before and afterwards. And that was about it. You know, I turned around and I started heading down, and I did think, even though I wasn't into the subject, I did think, could this be a Bigfoot? I never heard about him on the East Coast, right? But there's no way there's people around here. And from where I was, looking straight back at the ravine, we'd kind of turned around a corner, but the tree line was about 75 feet away and up above me. So judging for me, looking at that scene right there, judging from where the water splashed out, where the boulder hit, you know, the water splashed towards me, then I'm seeing it must have come from the opposite direction where the water splashed out. That's just pretty basic physics. Mm-hmm. And that tree line was a good 75 feet away. If there was something in there throwing at me, like you'd probably have to be one of those strongmen dudes in Russia to like throw a rock that size, you know, is my guess. So it could have been a strongman from Russia hiding in the bushes.
Shaq could be out there. We've heard
it's
that
very
before.
Plausible.
It is. It's possible. You know, it's possible. But you know, all those thoughts weren't really going through. I wasn't thinking anything specific, but I did think, could this be a Sasquatch? Could this be a Bigfoot? Because I'm not into the subject. I never heard anything like that on the East Coast, especially, right? So that was basically that story and then I started going down the ravine, a little scared, you know, making my way down, and I was heading home anyway. So I head home. In the coming days and weeks, I start turning to, you know, I don't have television, cable TV or anything like that. And a lot of my entertainment and tutorials, education and some things is on YouTube throughout the years. You know, I have the Instagram for work, but I never look at it. It kind of shortens your attention span to watch stuff, I think, on TikTok or Instagram. Yeah. So, you know, and YouTube is kind of censored, but you can still hear long form podcasts and different things on YouTube. So in the days, the weeks to come after this happened, I start delving into what is this thing? What is Sasquatch? What are people's experiences with it? And I mostly turn to YouTube, maybe the internet a little bit, but never any of those shows where I think some of them existed at the time on television 15 years ago. I'm sure there was some. Now there's probably a lot more. But so I start, and I do find, you know, one of the bigger ones, Sasquatch Chronicles, and some different ones where I'm hearing people's encounters and I'm listening to them. I'm kind of obsessed, like, with listening to them at that point, you know. So at night after work, I'll pop on a couple different podcasts back then and listen to people's encounters and experiences. And the more I hear them, the more I hear encounters like that connect to what happened with me. And I had no idea about any of this before, but I hear the rock throwing behavior. And then, eventually I get to encounters where it's some kind of a sense of fear or infrasound, or there was just the people that were having these experiences felt like panicked all of a sudden and felt, like they just shouldn't go in this certain area. Not every one of them, but there was certainly a high percentage or good percentage with rock throwing, and then people just having like a sense of fear from out of nowhere. And those two things in my first encounter, those two things happened within like a minute or so of each other. And I didn't know about any of this stuff. So as years go on, I kind of, keep looking into it. I'm hearing what people are saying, some researchers, regular people and their encounters. And as that's happening, I'm looking back to things that happened before that I thought was kind of weird, but I never questioned it because I didn't hear people's experiences like that. And like I said, I wasn't into the subject. And so I guess after that, I'm trying to think of my the next one after that.
What, your next experience?
Yeah.
Well,
because it happened in different. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No,
before you get into it, let's talk about the one you just told us all about.
I wrote some questions down and just thoughts.
Sure.
Well, I had one major one right off the top.
Go right
I think
ahead.
it's important. Before the rock splashed in the water, did you hear someone yell "Kobe" from off in the distance?
Kobe, nothing but net.
Yeah.
Well,
It may have actually been Kobe.
Yeah.
it did, but I was trying to edit that part out. It could have been Kobe Bryant.
It's not as good a story all of a sudden.
I did hear something like that.
No, yeah,
that's all right.
nowhere.
I just thought of that when you were telling it.
No, so
Nothing but net, baby.
I had questions about the ravine walls, I guess. Because I think our part of the country and your part of the country are very, very different.
Yes.
So how, like, when you say ravine, how wide is the ravine and how steep are the walls?
Well, some of them are, how like if you're in an area like that, right? You're in a rocky ravine. I mean, the width of the ravine where you could actually walk up it was, some parts of it were like, 12, 15 feet. Some parts of it were 30 plus feet, depending on, the spread of the boulders and stuff. And this is all boulder. It's all huge boulders, smaller boulders, tiny little trickling waterfalls, unless the water's running kind of hard. And then, like when you're in an area like that, Justin, and there's a steep area, like you look up and you'll see more of the mountain and the forest, but you'll see like exposed roots from the trees. Yep. And then it'll be mud for a little bit or dirt coming down a steep thing. And eventually those trees, you might lose those trees in a big storm or something. They might fall down into the ravine,
Yeah.
And then, so there is earth that you see here and there on the upper wall of some of the turns and stuff like that, where you see the trees coming over the side. So it's steep enough to where you could really scramble up that if you wanted to get up to some point or something like that. But the main part of the ravine where you're walking is, it's not as steep as a waterfall would be, but it's steep enough. It might flatten out for 20, 30 feet, like that area I sat down and rested in. It was sort of flat, had the way the boulders landed and stuff like that. And there was a little pool there. But it was very opened, it wasn't shady, this one. The next one down is a little tighter and it's a little shadier, with the trees being a little closer in, but still boulders and everything. But this one is wide open. You can get direct sunlight a lot. Like the spot that I was in where the boulder came, there was sun beaming down on, me and the rocks and everything. So that's why I say, like, it didn't really, if it was a loose stone or something like that, it couldn't have rolled because of boulders in the way. You know, I
it
would
would
have
have
heard
hit.
it rolling.
Yeah, I wasn't asking because I don't think that at all. No, it's just because when you say ravine on where we're from, you know, they're oftentimes huge and wide. I mean, you know, 100 yards or more. You know, we just came from Hocking Hills, and like Conkle's Hollow.
Yes,
is
that
a
one's
ravine.
huge. Yeah.
Like it's a half a mile wide.
Wow.
So, but we don't have the mountains you have. We have hills. So it's all low. It's all smaller and wider kind of deal. You know, it's basically like ravines over. And from our part of Ohio, it'd be like a little valley probably for you. It sounds like that's what I was just thinking because
Yeah, well, that's pretty big. That's pretty wide and everything.
It's-
It sounds like the ones you're talking about might not be too rocky, just like maybe some water coming down, but a lot of trees.
yeah, big whole stones. Like I'm talking car size or some of the smallest ones. Because it's where the glaciers ended, so there's not a lot of topsoil on them. It's pretty much exposed bedrock. You know what I mean? It's exposed bedrock ravines. Another question I had is how you said about a minute walk from where the feeling started to where you had the rock, right?
Well, I think time-wise, I wasn't walking that whole time, but time-wise, it was about a minute between that feeling and when I sat down, and then the stone that came and splashed the water. It was about a minute.
Have you ever been all the way up that ravine?
Yes, and actually talk about when your question actually sparked a memory that I kind of should have explained actually as part of why maybe that happened. So one day, and this is a few weeks before this incident, right? There was no incident, but I was up there again, and this is before this happened. I should have mentioned it because I think that maybe that is why it led to this happening. So I went up, this a few weeks before, I went there, and I went a little further up to where you finally you're looking at a big waterfall, and it's a waterfall that's steep enough to, you know, you're not climbing up the waterfall, but if you go to the left of it a little bit, you can scramble up these boulders, and then it turns into, just like I was saying, it gets up towards the tree line where the roots are exposed because it's an overhang. You know what I mean? Like here's the forest, and that's a steep area where you're looking up at the roots of the exposed roots of some of these trees that are just hanging on the cliff, ready to go. You know, and so I totally forgot about that. But I think this is why this happened. So a few weeks ago, or a few weeks before that, anyway, I was up there, and I decided to take away. I wanted to get higher up into the mountain above that waterfall. And I scrambled up this area to the left of the waterfall, which is probably over 100 feet. And it's a steep, gravelly bank kind of in the how this ravine banks around. And it's a little dangerous because if you start sliding on gravel, you know, it's hard to stop, you know, if there's nothing to grab onto. So it's a little sketchy, and I said to myself, well, those tree roots are, you know, maybe 4 or 5 feet or something, to where the very top of this steep area is. So if I can get up there, and this is 15 years ago, I was a little younger back then. I was 35 or whatever, you know. And so I said, well, if I can get up there, I can grab onto those tree roots. I can explore this new area. So that's what I did, except I calculated how far that stretch was to get as far as I can up the steep area, and then grab onto these tree roots. It was more like maybe 7 or 8 feet, and a lot of those tree roots were dead. So there were a couple of them that were still alive, and at that point I was like, oh, I have no choice. Oh, I could kind of scramble my way back down, but if I start sliding on that gravel, that's not good. And so I climbed up a couple of healthy roots and right onto the wood line, And I went up, and that's a very weird area that nobody would be. And it also kind of corresponds with what I've heard throughout the years. I'm sure you guys maybe have heard this too, where the northwestern side of a mountain, especially one with like a pine grove on it, on the northwestern side is often where people will find sign of Sasquatch, tree structures or anything like that. And it's kind of an isolated place. It doesn't matter what state it is almost. But from my understanding, there's different people that say that there's that could be an area where they sleep or an area where they call home, or you might find tree twists and signs up there and stuff. And I wasn't thinking that, because this is before the rock incident.
Right.
I was thinking I just want to get up there. And I always wondered, did I hit something off going up that way? And then the next time I came, it was like, hey, here's that guy again. I know he's leaving, but you know, it was clear that I was leaving at that point.
Give him a message.
But that's another commonality. Yeah. Sometimes I hear when people are leaving, they're going to leave, and then they get pushed out or whatever.
We talk a lot about that with the rocks, is that if they wanted to hit you with one, they would hit you with one. You know, the rocks are almost always interaction or just to let you know something.
Like a warning, yeah.
Yeah, it depends. You know, when it's tiny little pebbles and they're throwing them at you, and that's kind of like a fun, I guess we would call a fun interaction, where they may be screwing with you, but, you know, it's nothing serious. When the rocks are bigger than your head, you know, that's them showing
more
you,
serious.
I'm big and strong, and it's time for you to go.
Yeah.
Who was it? It was Hocking Hills, actually. We had the one write-in story where the softball-sized rock came whizzing past their head.
Yeah.
And they thought it missed them. And I'm a big believer that, no, it wanted you to know it was mad.
Yeah.
But didn't want to kill you at that point.
It missed you on purpose.
So it let you know that, hey, I can throw this softball-sized rock about Mach 3.
Like Randy Johnson.
When that pigeon exploded.
Exactly.
I know. But that'd be you.
What?
Like a human being hit by one of these boulders or swinging.
Right, yeah.
But that also, I'm sure you've heard it, but heard it at home. Everybody's never gone back far enough in our show. Andrew's encounter. We had two. We did the Andrew's episode. There was two rocks. And it's funny, they both were involved water. And both involved steep banks and or cliffs.
Right, yeah. Tossed down from above.
And that's what they do. You know, it's... the one was, there's Bigfoot, That's My Fishing Spot is roughly the name of it, something like that. That's My Fishing Spot. Where they got the guy to move both times. Different parts, or they're both at night, but...
What about the newest one I just heard over the weekend, the same kind of scenario, but with Wild Bill just told us a story very similar.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Which, don't spoil, because I think he's going to come on and share it.
Yeah, but something similar, yeah.
It was one of Wild Bill's real first encounters before he did any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Wild Bill from Mount Monster, anybody that don't know.
Right.
So it's you know, one of these things, and then, like you said, the dread feeling. Or I don't know that that's the best way to describe your version of it. Like you said, it affects... You've heard, you know, all of Sasquatch Chronicles West has a library of well over 1,000 now.
Yeah.
And then stuff like the Confessionals, our show. You know, there's some really great podcasts out there that cover a lot of this stuff. The infrasound, or that feeling, I don't know if it's actually infrasound, but that's the best thing we can compare it to. It's a wide variety of effects it has on any given person. From all-out panic to, like, we talked about the turkey hunter that didn't realize he had peed and vomited until he was driving home and he could smell it on himself. Like, he was, you know, his blackout fear until he was about halfway home driving the truck. And then finally the adrenaline had went low enough that he could, like, think again.
Came back to consciousness.
To, like, you know, maybe more of yours were like, I don't feel good about this. But you're not running out of there Mach 4. You know, just like that more predatory sense of like, you know, there's something I don't feel good about where I'm at. I don't like
my gut's telling me to leave.
I don't like being right here right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something purposeful they do, or if it's a byproduct of their existence, where they like tigers do it intentionally. If it is infrasound, they do it intentionally to paralyze prey. There's a lot of evidence suggests that they can paralyze deer species with it.
That'd be nuts.
And walk right up to them.
Like Crocodile Dundee. When he does that thing. No,
yeah.
paralyzes you.
But I don't
That's
know.
his
Yeah.
infrasound.
Very interesting.
Hey, I
stuff.
tried that on my buddy's dog when I was a kid.
Did it work?
The Crocodile Dundee thing, because
Yeah.
it was like one of those dogs that you can't get close to. It's not mean, but they just had it tied up and like it tried like would jump on you. Nope, it jumped on me. I tried that,
Well,
the
was it a
Crocodile
crocodile?
Dundee thing.
You don't have the right infrasound frequency
There you go.
that he does.
I guess not, man.
Yeah.
I guess not.
You gotta have the right knife on you.
All right.
Helps.
Did you figure out your next one?
Yep. So, yeah, that was that. So as the weeks go on, like I said, I'm looking into people's encounters and stuff. And the other place I go is a little bit closer to me. It's a reservoir, and it's really big. It's I guess it wouldn't matter to say it because there's only there's 3 or 4 reservoirs in this area. So it's the biggest reservoir that feeds New York City up in the Catskills. And if you can find it on a map pretty easily, it's the Ashokan Reservoir. So, and that place I know at the back of my hand. So I would say the second thing, and this is now, I'm hearing people's stories. I'm amazed that people encounter these in Florida and New Jersey and New York and Ohio and Maine and all these states. I never knew about this, right? So this is years ago. And I see, and I probably did hear about tree structures and twists and stuff like that, but I see one at the reservoir. It was about maybe 6 or 7 inch diameter tree, which is not a big tree. It's not really big enough to accept enough snow load to crush it, And at that time, it was a fresh living tree, and it was twisted 360 degrees and bent down towards the ground. These are common now with people like you guys have heard a lot of these stories, I'm sure, about tree twists. And so that was kind of like my second thing that I noticed. And then I noticed another one out there, maybe weeks or maybe that same summer. But I'll give you a couple other ones that were a little scarier. So that's the second place, that reservoir area that I kind of go to a lot. Now, fast forward a little bit, I'm living out in this area called Kerhonkson. It's about 40 minutes from me southwest, and it's a lot more rural. And I lived out there for a few years. And so I would always find the place that was close to me that, the cool nature spot. And in this case, you guys might have even heard of it. It's Minnewaska State Park in New York State. And there has been people that have had experiences there, none that I know personally. But so I find this other area, and I do kind of the same thing where when I find a new area, I explore the areas that people don't go. I live so close to it that I had a little drone, not a one with a camera, but like a stunt drone, cheap one that I would bring out there with several different batteries. And it was so close to my house, it was wide open. I'd fly it around there at night, and I'd usually be the last one that left. So I went out, and I also do some snowshoeing. So the first thing I think that I noticed out there, it was during the wintertime. And again, it was a steep ravine that people don't go up. I snowshoed up there, and now at this point in my Sasquatch journey, I'm hearing different things about trackways and stuff like that. Like, oh, they're in line, right? A lot of them are in line.
Right.
They're also far away from each other, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet maybe, because their legs are longer and some of them are just bigger. But for the most part, their stride is different than ours. So I kind of I heard about some of this stuff already. But I go up there with my snowshoes, and it's a very, very thick area. Hunters wouldn't really tend to go up that high into the mountains, and yeah, people hike. But this is, off the trail in this area. It's just, what's the name of that thing? It's like a manzanita or something kind of thing, real thick. And then in the wintertime, the visibility is better, but it's still thick up there, even with no leaves. and I see a trackway in snow, what looks like a trackway. Now, if I didn't get into the subject, I might just think, oh, maybe it was a fox just bouncing from one hole to the next, and I wouldn't have examined it too close. But I walked over to it and looked, and now there were no definitive clear toe print or anything like that, because it had snowed about 16 inches, and that's why I broke out my snowshoes. And then the day before, it must have snowed about an inch. So it covered whatever details were in the bottom of these, but it fit the bill just like any other trackway I've heard of. It just fit the bill, between 4.5 and 6 foot strides. It was shadowing a trail, but it was way far away from the trail that I wasn't even on that trail, but it kind of went in that same direction, but way off in the forest. And it came from one direction and went around and went going into the forest. And at that point, I knew enough about the subject to say, I'm not going to follow that. I'm not following this. I'm not going to follow this trail.
You know what?
Smart idea.
We have buddies on both sides of that line.
On that coin, yeah.
I'm definitely one to be like, I had my Bigfoot encounter. I'm good.
Yeah.
I know the real. Like, I'm happy.
So with all your sightings, those would all be considered Class B sightings, correct?
B and C.
B and C. What would the C make the one C?
Like the tree branch and stuff like that.
Okay.
Because that's less definitive.
Okay.
When he sees the trackway,
that's a B.
The rock throw.
Yes.
That's B.
Okay.
Secondary things where there's activity actively happening either around him, right before him. The tree branch, the tree twist, it's less definitive, so it's really harder to
determine if
that
was
it. Can be
it.
Snowfall. It can be, even though you know what you're looking for, but for people at home that maybe not. The difference between a snow break and these twists we're talking about, or most of the time, snow breaks, especially if you live in snowy places like New York and Ohio and Michigan, trees break in the winter due to getting too much snow on them, and they snap. And a lot of times, it can have a slight twist to it. But a lot of times, it's like a 90-degree break. Mm-hmm. The twists are like wrapped, like 2-3 times. And you can see the bark's all twisted around. That's less likely to happen due to snowfall. But there's less, I guess, what you would say, proof there in that.
Tornadoes, right?
I mean, yes, very, very tiny, isolated tornadoes. The only one that I ever seen that was a tornado was that I really think could have been a small tornado was, who was it? A guy showed us a video of a tree line that had like a little farm tree line that had like 50 tree twists on it.
Wow.
And you were there. You may not remember. It was at a conference.
I probably don't remember.
It was like 50 in a row along this whole tree line, and I'm like, that may have been a tornado. I really doubt a Bigfoot was just sitting there all night just...
Unless he was real mad.
I mean, he could have been real mad, but I think it just ripped him out and threw him around.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so how big... You showed us on your hands, but how big would you say thick that tree was that was twisted?
Well, the first one I saw was 6, maybe 7 inches.
Yep.
Which is pretty significant,
it's pretty thick for a twist.
Yeah, and I actually used to be, before I got into stonework, I used to be a woodbender. Oh. So I can kind of, I mean, anybody that goes outside nature can kind of tell you too. Like if you were to break a living tree, there's so much water inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you were to be able to twist it or crush it somehow, it would actually just even leak out. But it's fibrous. And this one was about 360 degrees around and pointed down. And because of the nature of the break, that it was still alive and wet, it ended up being a bunch of little splinters. It was still together, but it was like a bunch of little sharp splinters that were soft when it was first done because it was alive. But as I passed that, as years went on, I would pass that trail and see that thing dried out and dead now. And all those little splinters were hard and kind of sharp. Whereas if it was a dead tree and it was just, there was some pressure on it or it was bent, it would be more likely to snap without those little splintery toothpick kind of things,
100% for everybody at home. It would have normally they have one side of the bark still connected, but when it's snow breaks, they're pretty clean because they're in the winter, so they're not full of water. You know, they're keeping the water down in their root system, and they just snap. You know, I don't know. There's Rick Rellis, actually. Rick Rellis, I Know Squatch, has an amazing pamphlet you can buy. I think it's like $5-10. Mm-hmm. A little booklet that really kind of breaks down. You remember?
Yep, the old guy.
The tree breaks and what's a snow break, what's tree break, what's a tree like normal tree bend, what's maybe a Sasquatch. It's a great little guide. Rick's a good.
Who is that guy? What's that guy's name?
Rick Rellis. His partner's name's Hans. I've only met him his partner one time because he lives way away.
Mm-hmm.
I Know Squatch. Good friend of the podcast. He's been on the podcast a couple of times.
Yeah.
So super knowledgeable.
Met him a handful of times at conferences.
What I enjoy about him, especially when it comes to tree structures, is we all know Bigfooters and stuff like that every single thing in the woods, every tree bend, every snap is always Bigfoot, like off the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And he's very much not that, you know, where he goes in and he's like, you know, 80, 90, 50, 100%, whatever, of these things aren't Bigfoot. But he has this nice pictured pamphlet of kind of what you're looking for.
Right.
And we've even, I think one of our presentations, we asked to use one of his pictures. I think it was the stone in the tree. Talking about stones.
Oh, yeah.
Like literally like a 900-pound rock had been picked up and set about 8 foot in the air into this tree Y.
Yeah, the Y of the tree, yeah.
No cliffs nearby, nothing. And it's like, yeah, there's 15 buddies down here hammered at 2 a.m. trying to shove this rock in a tree.
No, it's what he said earlier. The world's strongest man. It was an Atlas stone.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Bill Kazmaier.
That's a cool picture. It's Rick's picture. They found it on expedition. Rick works extensively with the BFRO and all, you know. Mm-hmm. Rick's a great guy, too.
That's pretty crazy. So it was one of those Russian strongmen were out there, too, I guess. Huh?
They're in the
Marius
mountains. They're in the
Pujanovsky.
mountains, I guess, apparently, in North America.
Right. It's how they train.
When they're not training in home country.
No. They actually train like Rocky.
You go to mountain in America.
Right. They train
You
like
survive
Rocky.
hillbilly.
They're like Rocky 1. You train like Rocky.
If you can survive hillbilly, you will be strongest man.
You're not wrong.
That's why not Putin, but the guy way before him said he wouldn't invade America.
Gorbachev, I don't know. Oh, we got
some echo.
Echo going on. Oops, there we go.
Oh, is it gone?
It
Yep,
stopped.
it's gone.
Okay, but no, sorry. Yeah, it's the tree break stuff is always one of those. It's like it's hard, but yeah, we got an off kick of what Class B. So a lot of the Class B. But continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's all right. So there was that, and so that kind of brings us to I saw that trackway. Mm-hmm. So the second thing that happened there was I think they're all would be considered Class B.
Yeah.
But let's see, it must have been I was down that creek. Now this is the Minnewaska area, not the reservoir, and not the first place I was. Where the stone was thrown, but you know, the big nature preserve where I'd moved to Kerhonkson and lived out there for a bit. So the second thing that happened in the same area, and it's kind of like the backside of this nature reserve, to where not as many people go back there, but still people go back there. But people go up to a waterfall upstream to view that. It's very beautiful. Most people go check that out. And I found the spot again where you're kind of going downstream from there. And I think I might have even been trespassing. But I was walking down the creek. You know, did a good amount of trespassing here and there. But
stop saying that. I got to bleep those out.
Well, you know, trespassing as far as an esoteric kind of trespass. Not a specific.
Nothing legal.
Right.
Nothing that would fit the legal definition of trespassing.
Right.
Yeah, there weren't any signs, so.
There you go. He's right.
It's hearsay. Really.
That's right.
So, you know, I'll kind of like sum up a few more, try to get them through kind of quicker. So this one, and now this is at the point where I'm hearing, of course, people's encounters and different things, right? And I am thinking Sasquatch now when I go out hiking.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not thinking every sound is one, but I thought it was odd because it was the same thing. I went down this stream. I hiked down. It was getting a little kind of dark. So I was like, all right, I'm hiking to this point. I never went down this far. I'm going to turn around. And as soon as I turn around, I go, this isn't a ravine. It's just a flat creek. So I start going back up it. maybe 100 feet or so after I turned around. And now this is like a windless day. There was no wind. There's no anything. And there's a dead tree on the side of that creek with a diameter of maybe 12 or 14 inches. And it was dead. It was maybe 8 or 9 feet tall, broken off. And I walked past it. I didn't notice it walking past it. It's just there's a lot of trees around. But the first thing I noticed is I heard a loud crack behind me, as if somebody shouldered that thing. And, there was no wind. And when I heard the crack, I turned around with enough time to see it hit the water. So this tree that was just dead and standing there, minding its own business, once I passed it, it decided to break. And it wasn't just, a weak kind of just fell over, just happened to fall over. There was kind of a report from maybe the middle of the tree that was still like alive still, or not alive, but still hard.
Yeah,
not rotten like the outside.
Yeah.
But it was a loud thing that kind of scared me. And it's an area where there's thick brush again. So something could have easily been in there. I didn't see anything like that. So that was the other thing that kind of freaked me out. And now I think this is the same summer, but this was probably my scariest thing that happened at this same place. So like I said, I go to this place. It's not too far from my house. I fly my little drone around, and because it's very flat and open, there's an open area after you park. There's a big open quarry type area, and then you walk through that and you get to the large waterfall or the other direction where I went. And so this trackway. So it's dusk. It's pretty much dark. There's still a little light in the sky. And it's like, it's time to go home. So I take the drone, and it's a tiny little thing, $30. I forgot what the name of it was. They had them at Target for a while, no camera or anything on it.
Yeah.
So I start heading back to my car, and the sky is light enough to where I don't need a flashlight. The trail is straight that I'm on that leads right back to my car. It's a rail trail. So you can hear yourself walking on the road and, the gravel, and you can see the straight strip of dusky kind of sky above you. And I knew where my car didn't feel like I needed a flashlight. But I tell you, man, I got escorted out of there. I was at one point, I was maybe like 150 feet away from my car. It was essentially dark out. And I'm walking down this trail. I knew my car was up ahead of me. And from out of nowhere, and it wasn't trying to be quiet. I believe it was trying to let me hear it. And maybe like the drone freaked them out or something. They probably recognized me as always being the last one out. Oh, this is the guy that goes wherever, right? Like places that we don't want people to go or whatever. And so I'm on a very human trail walking back to my car, and it was probably, the trail's 4 or 5 feet wide, and the forest is right there, of course. And it was probably about 12 or so, maybe 15 feet to my right. And it escorted me out for not even 20 feet, which was the scariest 20 feet probably of my life, walking in the dark. Because, man, these footfalls were bipedal footfalls. Every single one of them was like, they something wanted me to hear it, And it was just stomp, 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 stomp. And in about 6 or 7 steps, it essentially passed me. It started out a little to my side and a little bit behind me. And I noticed, I thought about it afterwards. I wasn't thinking this right away. I was just thinking, man, I'm in trouble here or something, right? So, mind you, I didn't see anything. It's all dark. And I heard it pass me basically in less footsteps than I took to get the same amount of distance,
Right.
Stomp, stomp, stomp. And then all of a sudden, it's not directly in front of me, but in front of me, off the trail to the right, and then boom, silence. And the silence, I don't know what was scarier, when it went silent or when it started to stomp on the ground.
Right.
But it matched everything I had heard up to that point. It matched people's encounters where they feel like they get escorted out of the area. And that I knew, I had to feel if I had a flashlight and just turned it on whatever was there, you know, I probably would be one of those guys that maybe doesn't go back in the woods, man, because I would have seen it. It would be right there.
No, I think you'd be one of those guys that they're still looking for.
Well,
you think so?
With these kind of northern New York or central New York, you know, the Adirondacks, the Catskills, they have some really scary Bigfoot encounters. I believe it was Small Town Monsters. One of their most recent 2 documentaries they just did was all about the Bigfoot in the Adirondacks. It was the Adirondacks. It was. And they get what I say about Bigfoot, and you know, we talked about it in our speaking events, is that 90% of your North American Bigfoot population is probably harmless, but the further I feel the further north you go, the more dangerous that population gets. Less people interference, more likely or more willing to defend their territory, and more calorie dependent. You know, we're a bunch of easy calories walking around. But the ones that live in Ohio know that, you know, there's 5,000 people per square mile. And up in the Adirondacks and the Catskills, you know,
not as much.
There's 50 people per square mile when you're out there hiking trails and stuff. You know, it's, I don't know, the tree that fell into the river right behind you. How far away did you say it was when you got past it?
Well, once I passed it, I was probably at least 30 feet past it already.
So pretty much right behind you.
Yeah, it was like I said, it cracked. I heard the sound, and I was quick enough to turn around and actually see it land in the water, you know, because it freaked me out. It was like a loud cracking sound.
I wonder if it punched it. It had to have just got out of brush, punched it real quick.
Like walk by, slap, and run.
To see his reaction.
There was thick brush right by it, you know, about 4 feet tall, like thick, brushy kind of stuff that you had to go around, and something could have been squatting down in that, but I don't think that was an accident, man. I think something shouldered that thing, and it sounded like if you were to break a baseball bat or maybe something bigger.
Yeah,
because the outside of the tree would be rotten, but you know, the inside would. I think it was still solid. I think it would have sat there for a long time. And like I said, no wind and stuff. And this is very close. There's all these encounters here in the Cronxon area were within a quarter mile of each other, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're getting followed out. The more he talks, the more it just reminds me of Hawking.
Hawking, or down in Kentucky.
Several of the locations. Like, we'll talk about why. Probably it reminds us of those spots. Because it probably reminds you of the same reason it reminds me.
I would imagine, yeah.
But being followed out, like you felt, I 100% think you're right, that when they're doing the heavy footfalls, they want you to know you're being escorted. They're making a very bright point because they don't make noise. We've had hundreds of people talk to us about them watching a Bigfoot glide silently, 20 feet away, and then watching a Bigfoot stomp off like a 5-year-old.
And I know,
was that Noah's encounter?
Yeah,
Noah's, we caught it breaking into the cooler, and it stomped off like a kid.
Yeah, I'd almost imagine too it'd be one of those scenarios where if he did have a flashlight and flash on, there'd be nothing right there.
It could be, Ron Moorhead, a good friend of ours, even talked about that several times of just
especially like it's there, feel it, hear it,
feeling the Bigfoot, like feeling it walk, feet from you. Turn on that flashlight. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I could be. I can't say that I'm really. I think when people start getting into the subject, I think most of them logically are kind of like in the ape camp,
Right.
And I was too for a few years, but I can't really throw out and discount all these different stories I heard with the old woo factor there.
Right. Right.
And I am I wasn't raised this way, but about 10, 12 years ago, I did get baptized in a Christian church. I basically, long story short, basically I had been a conspiracy guy for a long time since I was young, in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I researched a lot of this stuff about, these different brotherhoods and different groups. And what happens is, in my opinion, what happens a lot of the time is that people that research this information end up sometimes knowing more about that organization and the people that are actually in it. On some levels,
Yeah.
And, that brings you into, or at least with me, it brought me into different things like, different symbolism and geopolitics and all these different things. Like I was like, trying to figure out the world throughout my life, really. And basically that's what led me into Christianity, because I decided one day that, if there's all these groups and all these important people and they seem to like worship Lucifer,
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, well, then this is what they really believe, and it seems to give them power. And if that story is true, if that narrative is true, then what holy book speaks about that and demons and all this stuff?
Right.
And it was the Bible. And so I decided to start, long story short, decided to start going to church, and had no family history of that, but accepted Jesus Christ as my savior at one point, but where before I was like kind of agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, the first few years I was assuming that it was, Gigantopithecus blacki or Homo heidelbergensis, or something like that. From what I hear about Homo heidelbergensis was that, if I'm saying that right, was that recently they discovered that, and maybe Justin, maybe you've heard something about this. Recently, in the last 5 or 10 years, they discovered some evidence that it was that it could only be 10,000 years old, whereas beyond that, they thought it died out like 100,000 years ago. So
I
was thinking,
can't confirm with that exact species, but that is coming to light with a lot of the homos right now. Because of bone and some early fossils, okay. So as of recording this, the season finale is not completely out, but as of the time that this comes out, the season finale will be out, and we do a big breakdown of how wrong carbon dating is and how inaccurate it is the closer you are to it. So like when you're only looking 2 million years back, it's nothing. Like it can't tell anything. And when you're dealing with real bone, it really doesn't know anything. So with some of these species, like you mentioned Gigantopithecus, we think it depends on which accredited professor you talk to. They died out 45,000 years ago. They died out 200,000 years ago. They died out 2 million years ago. Everybody has a different opinion because nobody can decide.
Sure.
So with these things, dying out in the last 30,000 years, there was tons and tons of species that made it past the quote-unquote mass extinction event of the last ice age. Technically speaking, if they made it past that event, they should still be present in some capacity, besides the oddball here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like Homo sapiens and stuff like that. Not Homo sapiens, Homo genus or walking up to that line. It just makes no sense. Anyway, sorry, it was a thing. Yes, I don't know the exact species you're talking about, but yes, accurate.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that one then, where this is part of the season finale, because that would really explain a lot of things with carbon dating, why the timelines are just so confused.
Mm-hmm.
Wait until you hear about the international. Oh, what the heck was it called? We're gonna do an episode on it. It'll probably be next week we record it.
Do I know?
The people that run the geological timescale.
Gotcha, yes.
There's an organization that does not let geologists change the geological timescale. It's like the Smithsonian for geologists. They run it. They will not let anything change.
Mm-hmm.
And they hide findings and all. It's a crazy thing that nobody has ever once talked about. I wanted to be a paleontologist. I never knew it existed.
I knew you wanted to be that.
I told you I did.
Well, I mean, when I called you, never mind. Different debate.
Oh, okay.
Different debate.
I don't know what you're referencing, but
No.
so yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Okay,
Archaeologist.
Darn it.
Yeah, no, you'll
That shadowy
enjoy
group
it.
sounds even more shadowy than the J fan club.
It's up there. They may be the same organization when you really look into it. We're going to look it up, and it's going to be Stonebender's picture as the president of the organization.
Yeah. Depends what clones are, running the place.
Trust Stonebender.
And just 50 people with just the back of their heads.
Grown out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all you.
That'd be sweet.
It's just all you. Yeah, no, I mean, very awesomely Bigfooty. I know, everybody at home couldn't tell. I had to step out for a second. They keep trying to call Emily into work.
Oh, gotcha.
So we have 3 kids, and they're trying to call Emily into the work the one day she can't do it.
Yeah.
So I just step out for just a second. So I just heard the conspiracy stuff, just a little bit of it. But
I don't know.
What do you think about? I know we have a thought about his Bigfoot stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Why don't you go first?
Well, which one in particular? Like all of it?
You do all of them. You can do pick individuals.
Well, I mean, it's great. Like getting more stories from up in this area, but yeah, I liked your progression through them too, like where you started
versus where you ended up. Yeah.
Right. And then all the stuff that came in between that. And then having that background too, and like being the quote unquote, conspiracy guy, because I have to deal with that too. And I get it. Like you understand, like some things are just messed up and we're not getting the right, answers to a lot of our questions. And so, it sends off the red flags and all sorts of things. And
but it can eat your life.
100% it can. And, the Bigfoot thing kind of overlaps that too.
Oh, yeah. The Bigfoot, I think that's why we enjoy Bigfoot so much, is it's tangentially connected from everything from UFOs to ghosts to...
Yeah, there's so much that overlaps and can encompass.
It is all really connected. I mean, I didn't really talk too much about that aspect of it, but I do believe there's absolutely a government cover-up, no matter what you believe they are. There's certainly a government cover-up. They have all the toys. They have all the infrared. They have all the time and the budgets to observe these things. Who knows what they know. And like anything, I believe it's one of those things that also covers the tract of God in some ways. I believe that a lot of conspiracies go back to...
That's what I was going to say too, is the most important probably thing about all this is, it led you to like ask questions, and then you start asking the real important ones is like, what's really going on here? Why are you here? Why are these people, committing wars and death, in the name of God in front of all each other? Is there something's important with all of this? It all ties together, and, it leads you to that. If you really want to ask the important questions about life, you end up in that place, and, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is good. Critical
it's a
thinking
blessing,
skills
right?
are good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blessing that you got led to where you're supposed to be. I mean, that's, most people in your situation would probably got turned away after a tree exploded behind you. I mean, that's a lot for a lot of people that aren't even into this like stuff. When you have that kind of, what I was getting to is that your encounters remind me a lot of a local place that we just were at this weekend.
Yeah.
Which was Hocking Hills. Hocking Hills, anybody doesn't know, which if you listen to this show, you probably already do. Is a very strange place for Bigfoot in the Midwest and in central Appalachia.
To say the least.
Like, I'm just saying in general for Bigfoot.
Yes.
It has tons of Bigfoot sightings and a lot of really scary ones. But by that, I mean very intense encounters with almost nobody gets hurt ever.
Right, but the fear.
But there's this high level of fear, high level of anxiety.
Dread.
The walking, they walk you back to your car often, and you're stomping in the woods right beside you, throwing rocks, snapping trees. I can't tell you how many times we've heard a tree get thrown across the trail, like just for you. Like it's just to show you, whoof, and the tree goes flying across the trail that you were just walking on. I mean, I've heard that for Hocking Hills a dozen times. Not one that maybe broke off right at the edge of the trail, but it's, and then they walk you back to the car. Sometimes they whoop, sometimes they bluff charge. All this really, and then lots of rock throws. Mm-hmm. All this really scary stuff, but everybody makes it back to the car. Nobody got hit by a rock.
They live to tell the tale.
Nobody got hit by a tree.
Yeah.
And I believe a lot of these people. And what that leads me to believe is that this is an area that there is something worth protecting and making sure you don't come back to. So we kind of think, at least me, I can speak for me, and I think you kind of agree too.
Yeah.
That this may be either a nesting site, a birthing site, or a rearing site for a couple families or whatever, where they have very young kids, and they do this to make sure you don't come back to this spot. They make it so scary. I mean, we've had the ones at Hocking where they're shaking trees and you just see the fangs and stuff like that, and they're just screaming at you, and they chase you back to the car, and everybody's like, it was the scariest thing in my life. They were going to kill us.
But
they didn't.
Right.
They followed you for a mile back to the car, and they didn't rip you apart at any given point.
Yeah.
That's them just wanting you to... Well, you got maybe too close to a baby, too close to a nest, too close to a pregnant female that's, close to giving birth.
Too close to a food source like that
It could even be something like that. And they just
deer.
really want you not to go back to that square. But then you have people that can tangentially walk the edge of it, and they're fine. They never have that. It's just like you said. It's one person. They maybe went a little too far off the trail. They maybe went a little too in, and they got to set that record straight.
Doing Ninja Warrior, grabbing tree roots, climbing up.
Yeah. No, what do you think about that?
They probably didn't like that. But man, you're totally right, man. I agree with that because there seems to be like a protocol almost, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe the fear that they instill in you is first, maybe the rock is first, but there's a protocol, it seems like, for the most part. And if you are, too thick like me to understand the first one, you get a rock thrown at you, maybe.
Right.
No, it progresses.
If the thing could have stepped out behind a tree, I would have been one of those guys that, urinated on myself. Probably.
Right.
Was completely terrified, never went back to the woods. So I didn't get to that level where, it had to show me like, this guy is so dumb, I'm going to have to show him my body now.
I mean,
luckily that didn't happen.
From our experience, that's never good.
Right.
When we call them mountain kings, there's normally what we think is maybe one alpha adult. That's your absolute monsters. They generally don't leave the heart of the territory. A lot of the females and what we believe are the juvenile males and the kids will move around inside. A territory group, and they kind of stay to the heart of the range. And you hear dad yell, and all these kids, go back. But the 10, 12 footers are silent. Like, we've had several stories on the show where, like, a guy's going to shoot a Bigfoot. And he's like, okay, I don't want to shoot this thing. I'm putting my gun down. I'm going to walk away, and I'm just going to leave this, area. And as he turns around, he's face to face or face to belly button with a 12-foot tall behemoth that's like looming over him. Didn't hear this, essentially would be a 2,000-pound animal.
Sneak right up on him. Like a ninja.
And, snap him like a twig.
Yeah.
And like you said, that's for the really, really dense people. Like that one story, I think he ignored several signs because I think he said he even heard a howler monkey walking into the woods in like Tennessee.
That's not a good sign.
If you hear a howler, in central Tennessee,
I thought that was
that's not great. That's not great.
It's either a Bigfoot or the Three Stooges.
Oh, I was thinking Zoidberg.
Or Zoidberg.
No, triangulated by Larry, Moe, and Curly. You're in trouble.
But I really think you had some Bigfoot stuff. And like you said, you never had a Class A, and most people don't. Nope. And it's like a 50-50 shot with most people that have one if they ever wanted that encounter. If you'd asked me 8 years ago if I ever wanted mine, I would have probably said no. Right. Now I'm fine with it. I didn't get hurt. I believe it was not going to hurt me. Otherwise, it would have.
Man. Now I'm just hoping out there though there is there is
100% a Three Stooges Bigfoot.
Yeah, there's three of them out there just like they can't get anything right, screwing everything up. But there's one leader, it's bossing them all around.
That what it is.
Well, let me run down a couple more quick for you. I really want to get your thoughts on it too. So just that reminds me.
Before you go, we may run out of space on the recorder, so we may take a pause and come back. But keep going, just so you know. If I do that, that means we're taking a break for a second.
Okay.
Go on.
Should I come back out, go in, and come back out again if that happens?
Yeah. No, you'll know. It'll be okay. It'll be fine.
All right. So when I was being like walked, escorted out, right? This is something I forgot to tell you. I took one step. I basically ran for like one step when the first footfall that I heard from that thing. And then I decided that's crazy. Whatever it is, you don't want to run. So I ran for like 1.5 steps, and then I just started walking quickly again, right? And this is after, now I've heard people talking about this sometimes, like they come find you at your house. So that quarry area is it's kind of like a bowl when you go in there. It's a quarry, and you have cliffs on the right side, the left side, and in front of you.
Right.
And then if you go straight ahead, you go to the right a little, and there's the waterfall. So they know exactly who's in there at night. That's the only place to park or to walk in. And they know right when the last person leaves. I was always the last person that left because I lived so close. But after the being escorted out, the tree got pushed. You know, I saw the trackway in the snow. And then I remember one night, it could be totally nothing, right? But I remember one night I went back to my place, which was 2.5 miles away, 3 miles away maybe, you know, down the hill, down the road, and then down some other road. And it's all very rural out there. It's very dark at night. And I was out stepping outside my cabin, and I heard, of course, the barred owl, which may or may not sometimes be a barred owl, but it might have been a barred owl. But I thought it was funny timing because after that happened, not too long after, I heard the 3 barred owls in the woods around my cabin, some very small cabin I was renting. And I heard one, it wasn't up in the trees, it wasn't on the ground, it seemed to be straight ahead of me. And then I heard one behind me this way and then this way. So I heard, and I was like, gee, I wonder if these things, you know, are these maybe just barred owls? Or did these things like decide, well, you know where I live, and now I know where you live too.
Yeah.
You know? But just to squeeze my other experiences in, there's not too many more. But
no, wait, before you continue, let's talk
Sure.
about that one. With the barred owls. You know, that's another way. It's so weird. It's another Hocking Hills thing.
Yeah,
we've
is.
had our ornithologists be like, you know, so that's anybody at home. That's like what Ralph does. You know, he's a bird guy.
Ralph.
Yeah, Birdman. No, where they're out in the woods and hawking and stuff like that, and they hear what is clearly not a barred owl, but is mimicking a barred owl. And leading thought in the Sasquatch community is they use these owl noises to talk when they're around people for some kind of signal when they don't want people to know. When they don't care, people think they use tree knocks, which may be vocalizations, because nobody's ever found a tree that's been banged on, really. Nobody's ever found the club they're using.
Right.
So if anybody hasn't heard, howler monkeys actually can make it sounds like 2 pieces of wood banging in their throat pouch. So there's a thought that that's the sound they're using when they don't care. And when they care, they're not to be seen by people. They may be using a vocalization of a known animal, like a barred owl. But from the people that have heard that, like you said, you know, you can, if you know what a barred owl sounds like, you can kind of tell that's a thing that's acting like a barred owl. That's not like, doesn't sound like your normal barred owls you hear. It's acting like a barred owl.
It's an impression.
Yeah. To the average day person, it doesn't matter. You know, most people don't get to hear them. If you're a weekend warrior kind of type, you know, you just be like, oh, you know, that's cool. We heard an owl this weekend. And really, it's 3 Bigfoot circling around you stealing your marshmallows. But so that was at your home. That you know, how far is your home from your original encounter location?
You said about 2-3 miles, I think.
Well, yeah, probably about 3 miles.
So nothing.
And you only have to cross one road to get in from that wilderness area to my house. You basically, there's one road you have to cross, and then there's backyards, but it's a rural, dark area at night. And it was after all these different things, all these different experiences. Yeah, so it could have been owls, but you know,
It's
I had
weird,
a feeling
right?
the timing was weird.
But you've
It was a
heard
little
barred
weird.
owls, and then you've heard that thing. Do you think there was a distinct difference?
Well, I can't really say, to be honest, that it was something that was trying to sound like a barred owl. It sounded similar to a barred owl. I'm not good enough to say, well, that was definitely not a barred owl.
Right.
You know, it didn't really sound like an 800-pound barred owl, but the timing of it was strange. The fact that I was like triangulated was a little odd, and the fact that it wasn't up in a tree, it wasn't on the ground. The sounds were coming from something where it could have been 6, 7, 8 feet tall, kind of directly into the woods where a person could be. It wasn't really up in a tree. Normally you would hear them up in a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought all that was odd, but I didn't find it too odd. I just thought the timing of it was a little strange because I was in the wilderness, but I never heard too many barred owls around my place. And then all of a sudden I go into an area where they don't, the Sasquatch didn't seem like they wanted me to be. And then I get, this barred owl thing in my backyard. So I felt like maybe it could be them saying, hey, we can find you too.
Right.
The same thing happened to one of Eric's first interviews. Eric Uncomfortable. Everybody go check out Uncomfortable podcast. Eric, we love Eric to death. Go give him a listen. Go give him a 5-star review.
Uncomfortable podcast, huh?
Yeah. Love Eric to death. He lives about 3.5 hours that way.
Yeah, you're right.
I know where I'm right.
Yeah.
Anyways, one of his first interviews he ever did was this family that had experienced Bigfoots out in the wilderness, even with like what they feel like was a kill fence, and like they ran up on one like it was a hunting like they were hunting as a family, and this Bigfoot kind of got stuck in the middle of like 8 people, and it reacted very poorly to being cornered, even though the people didn't intentionally corner it. He kind of ended up in the middle of where they were hunting, and it just. All the people involved had really weird experiences. The guy and the daughters had continuing weird experiences. It ended up at their house, which is about 25 miles away. And it was super weird to where they had Bigfoots like looking in their windows, and the young daughter was drawing. I think she was 6 at the time, was drawing this thing and said, "This is what's looking in my windows at night."
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And, and the dad looked at it and he's like, well, that's the thing me and your older sister seen. And that's not great, that it followed them home.
Yeah.
So there's this whole thing, I think, and he kind of, if I remember right, when he spoke, when we seen him the first time, if I remember right, he kind of felt the same way as it was like, hey, you invaded our home and we're letting you know we know where yours is. As whatever that means as far as these animals or things go.
Right, yeah.
Is that just a friendly way of saying, be respectful next time you're in my neighborhood because we know where yours is? Or was it an actual threat? Was it them just curious? You were there. What do you do all the time?
Right, yeah.
I don't know. It's very interesting, and you had that experience. And then the barred owls, it's the same kind of thing where people all over the country have experienced that. What do you think?
No, I agree with you 100% on that. With the barred owls, and especially Hawking Hill's experience, what we've heard before, and especially Stonebender saying, I don't typically hear owls, and right now I got 3 of them right outside my house. That's odd. It's not normal, especially you notice it.
I can count the numbers I didn't call barred owls in that I heard them. We've done nature hikes for kids and stuff like that and called them in. Mm-hmm. But that takes an hour. And bringing them in, and then finally they come in and stuff like that. But that's like sitting out there for an hour to make that happen.
I've never really heard one ever that I'm aware of.
Hawking Hill, or no,
besides Mohican. Besides
one
that,
time, and that may have been a Bigfoot throwing a raccoon.
That was weird. Whatever it was.
Yeah. We heard. I don't think we ever shared this in the podcast. Maybe not. Maybe Patreon. We were in a state park where Mohican Suzanne.
Yeah.
Recorded one of the best Bigfoot sounds ever. Mm-hmm. Been analyzed. It had like 14 or 15 million plays in its first 24 hours of being on the internet. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so where we heard this owl and these raccoons, we're over there hiking. And these raccoons are in the dark screaming and running from something. We turn on the flashlights.
Well, remember we heard it running towards us and you're like, wait. Wait.
Don't turn on the light. Don't turn on the light.
Yeah.
And finally we turned on the light. It's this giant raccoon, and it looked at us. It looked at the light. It looked behind it and then ran right beside us.
Ran right back at us.
Because it's like whatever is behind it, it decided was much worse than what it was running towards. And we're like, all right, that's when we're going to leave. Because whatever that raccoon was scared of, it was a whole group of them getting murdered.
Yeah.
And then about half hour later, we're sitting across the river. And we hear these raccoons fighting something. And you just hear a raccoon go flying. Like screaming. Like, but you can hear, like... So we assumed it was a big owl had grabbed it and took it.
And just going.
You could hear this raccoon screaming all the way down the river.
Down in the distance where you can't hear it no more.
And
we
both
were like,
kind of comical, not for the raccoon, but that's kind of comical. Almost,
unless you're sleeping in a tent about 50 feet from it.
It was fun.
No, it was great. It was great. No, but yeah, sorry, continue.
Well, that's it with the owls, but the one thing that might have been the scariest thing is I heard a vocalization. Now this is, I'm taking you back to the reservoir now again. Not in that area where I was just talking about, where I had the track, got followed out and stuff. So this is where I saw 3 piles of scat one day. And I have pictures of on my old phone. If I can figure out, it's not an active phone, but if I can figure out how to get that to your email, I'll send them to you because they're pretty impressive.
I think you can send them to me through Facebook too, if you got Facebook on that phone or something.
Well, I don't actually have a
Facebook
account. I never had one.
We will figure it out.
All right, I'll figure it out. I'll keep it in mind too. I have a couple people that can help me figure it out too on this end, but they're pretty good, man. Like, there was 3. And they were next to each other. They were about 5 or 6 feet away from each other. 3 giant piles of scat. And I'll describe them. The one is, looks like maybe it drank some real cheap beer the night before. Wasn't quite a gravy steak, but it wasn't like diarrhea.
Gravy steak.
Not the gravy steak exactly, but I thought that term was hilarious.
Sorry, I wasn't ready for
gravy steak.
Gravy steak to describe scat.
That's a pretty funny term. Yeah,
well, accurate too. I mean,
accurate. No, because I can picture it.
Yeah, I just had some. Wow,
lovely.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the Schlitz ice gravy snake almost. Don't want that thing biting you.
No.
Oh my gosh.
And so there was another one, and it was, I put my sunglasses next to it, like for the picture, right? But if you were to, because my sunglasses are like 6 inches long, folded up, and if you were to unravel this thing, it would be about 17 inches long.
Dang.
It does look like the size of something a human being could take. But considering that this was in a brushy area around this reservoir, no trail around it, and it looks like something that eats meat to me. This doesn't look like old bear scat. It doesn't look like new bear scat. It doesn't look like deer or coyote scat, and we only have so many types of animals. And then the last one was most impressive because it was extremely wide. And
is that the one you just showed us?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'll post these, everybody. As long as we get them to us, I will post them on Facebook when this episode comes out.
My
goodness. It's all about you guys are all about science, that's what it is.
Scat is a whole class we have to take in college because it tells you so much about the animal.
Well, what is scat?
It's poop.
No, I mean what is that?
I mean look at this stuff.
I know.
The only thing that's even
whatever something eats meat, whatever took that, I think.
Yeah, no, I'll agree. It's definitely not a fibrous diet. It's fatty. It's because it's anyways.
Looks like
that's about 17 inches long. That one.
Phew.
And bears don't often have that kind of. We'll post pictures. Bears don't often have human-esque scat because their digestive systems are very different. Very few animals produce the same kind of thing we do.
Would you be able to gather anything from, from that poo?
Technically, you can get DNA and that kind of stuff from it. But it's kind of weird and stuff. It's depending on the animal.
I figured, it's not easy.
But you can tell what it was eating, and there was, broke up grizzly bear bones in there. That's impressive.
That would be a sign.
If it's gnawing on a grizzly bear skull.
It could have been just a big Saint Bernard.
If it's just eating grizzly bears and moose, that's an impressive animal.
That is true. Apex predator.
Yeah.
Odd that there was 3 of them right next to each other and stuff. And this is all around the same summer, but which I think kind of brings me to my last one and most recent one. And this was probably about 2 years ago. So this is more recent than any of these, right? But incredible vocalization I heard. I was standing right around that spot where I showed you that the pictures of that scat, but this is years later. And I went out there, I've been out there literally 1,000 times at this area in the reservoir. And there's just not people around in the forest there because it's technically New York City property. You need a fishing permit and a DEP pass to be there. And the only thing you're allowed to do there is fish. So most people go out on their rowboat. So you might see 2 or 3 rowboats out on the water, but the 1,000 acres, which is just on the southern side of it, man, I know that 1,000 acres like the back of my hand. I've been going there since high school. And so I was in that same area. And basically I was looking down a hill. I had just started make my way back to the car from the water line of this huge reservoir. And I walked down the trail a little bit. You go up a little bit of the hill and you can turn around. It was in the fall and you can still see the water and you can still see the woods where you just came from, and you can see the water through the woods. And so I'm going up the hill, leaving, and I'm still 15 minutes away from my car, but I heard a scream that sounded like it was a giant, almost like a giant human being with an extremely deep voice. It sounded like a 15-foot pissed off person, basically, screaming at the top of their lungs. Like the lung capacity was just crazy. It couldn't have been anything like a bobcat. You could have stuffed 2 bobcats into whatever this is, just its like left lung, probably, right? The most scariest and really the only vocalization I ever heard, and this is the most recent thing, really my last B type experience, whatever. And this thing screamed, and it wasn't directed at me. I felt it wasn't too close to me, but it was so loud that I was like in shock. I was scared. It was a fearful thing, but yet it wasn't too close to me. It wasn't like I've heard some of these encounters where the scream shook your chest bone, your ribs, and all this stuff, or somebody urinated blood afterwards or something like that. It wasn't anywhere to that degree. But it went on, and it was about maybe 6 or 7 seconds, of screaming. And then there was a break of 5 or 6 seconds, whatever, 7 seconds. Then there was another scream, that same, whatever it was. And then there was a space again of 5, 6 seconds of silence in between it. Then another one. And then after maybe 10 of those, in that silent space between screams, another scream started happening. I heard another one in that dead space between the screams of the deeper voiced Sasquatch, I would say, right?
Right, the big monster sounding one.
Yeah. And this one was the one that you hear on different people's encounters, where it's like the high-pitched woman screaming, being murdered or whatever.
Yeah.
That high-pitched sound we've all heard, encounters like this where you hear it sounds like a woman being murdered, right? A giant woman being murdered. And so in that dead space of that first lower scream joined in this banshee type scream. And it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was probably a minute or so. And I couldn't take my eyes off just turning around and looking in the general direction where it came from. It wasn't something I could point out exactly where it was coming from, but it wasn't coming from, every direction or anything like that. It was roughly where I had just come from. But if it was anywhere, because the shore, the water was about, at that point, maybe 300 feet away or so, maybe a little more from where I was up on this little hill, looking down and then flat through the woods. I could visually see the water, and most of the woods I could see, so it wasn't where I was. It wasn't between me and the shoreline, because it would have been louder. It would have been much louder if that's the case. But the other side of the reservoir, there's a good quarter mile of water, at least I would say quarter mile, before you hit the other shore, maybe even a third of a mile before you hit the other northern shore of the wilderness around this reservoir. And I can't imagine it coming from anywhere else other than the other side of the reservoir, which meant that over there, if you were to hear it over on that side, it would have been one of those terrifying screams that broke your eardrums or something like that, because it couldn't have been in the woods that close to me for how loud it was. I didn't see anything. I couldn't really point directly exactly to where it was coming from, just in a general direction. But man, it was luckily it was like during the day and everything, and I was on my way out. But that was the loudest thing I've really ever heard in the forest by any means,
Right, yeah.
And in relation to the big deep one, where was the feminine one?
Well, it seemed like that's the odd thing, because it seemed like they were right next to each other.
Okay.
They might have been, if they were a quarter mile away, whatever, across the reservoir in the forest, like I suspect, because they weren't just floating in the water or anything. They weren't out there swimming. There's some people in their boats, and there was one boat that day I saw way out. It's a big reservoir, man. And I know that guy heard it too, man. He definitely heard it.
Not having a great day.
Yeah, but the odd thing was, you're right. It sounded like it was kind of odd, because why would they have to scream back and forth that loud to each other if they're that close to each other? Because it could have been the same being. It could have been the same creature making both those sounds. Yeah. But it wasn't like there was one over here and then I heard one here, and well, they're probably communicating to each other. It really sounded like they were standing right next to each other. And this is broad daylight. And, from what I heard throughout the years, like, I've heard different things. Like the ones on the East Coast maybe aren't as vocal, like down in the big thicket or whatever in Texas. Like there's different places where they seem to be, people get more vocalizations. I don't really know for sure anything to do anything, right? Like wherever it is. But
my opinion on that is it depends on how many people there are. These things aren't dumb.
Yeah.
They know people are bad news in general.
Right.
So we're not going to make tons and tons and tons of loud vocalizations
unless it's not
near big populations, right. Unless it's necessary or not near big populations.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Like if you're out there where, you said you're the guy in the woods and there's one guy in the boat in the lake, what's that matter? They don't know you're there probably. And they may have seen the guy in the boat in the lake, but they may not have.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, so 10 times. Did it always sound like it was facing the same location, like the same way?
Yeah, it was consistent. The sound, the volume was consistent of both of them. It was just pretty terrifying, man. If it was closer to where I was,
been moving.
I would have been absolutely terrified. But I was scared enough I was definitely leaving at that point anyway. Right. And all these times I'm leaving. Like I just decide, not only the rock throwing incident, the log that got pushed down, of course, getting escorted out of the wilderness. They don't escort you in, right? They escort you out. But, and this time too, I had just decided to leave, walked a couple hundred feet. So I don't know if that was a coincidence, if they knew that I was there or not, maybe not. But, I do believe that as far as what the heck these things even are, is there is some kind of supernatural thing. I hear a lot about, well, you're either in the flesh and blood camp or this camp or that camp. The people that say flesh and blood, that can be there's not too many people, put it this way, there's probably not too many people that just think they're, ghostly apparitions. Like, whether you think there's a woo factor or not, they are flesh and blood, right?
Right.
Like, I believe they are. I know there's talk about different portals and stuff. I don't think they would need to utilize whatever a portal is to remain hidden from us. It's possible that they do, but now you have to go and study portals.
Right.
Who's doing that? NASA's doing that. They're not telling us.
Right. You can't trust them what they find.
Yes, what their results are. They're not going to tell us anything, really.
Not a space agency.
They've been researching portals since the 60s.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've made no progress.
No progress. That's why we're still looking into it.
Yep.
Right.
No
still
way
struggling.
We've seen Dogman and Behemoth crawl out of these in the Uinta Basin.
Yeah.
No way. No, altogether, it sounds like you live in a
pretty active
very
area.
squatchy area. And it's the Adirondacks, Catskills. Both mountain ranges are famous for it.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them are too shabby when it comes to Bigfoot. And like you said, you're often going out, past the areas of normal people. As in the day hikers, the
Weekend
Walmart
warriors.
tennis shoes people. That are just going out walking a couple miles, and you're going out past that point.
And what rank is New York on the state for Bigfoot
It's top
sightings?
10.
Yeah, I know it's up there.
It's up there. No, it is. Especially like we said in the beginning of the episode, is when you say New York, a lot of people think of New York City.
Right.
And your guys' state is so much more.
It's massive.
So much more than that.
Yeah.
Sure. It's not a big state compared to other states, but
from the East Coast, though.
I mean,
the amount of farmland and wilderness is just
mountains and dense habitat, and still, there's still wild areas.
You're connected to the Great Lake and the ocean.
Yeah,
it's got everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Adirondack Trail actually. What's that? Not the Adirondack Trail. What's the huge long one that goes up through the Appalachian?
Yeah.
Appalachian Trail. Pretty much terminates at I think it goes past to Maine, but it goes right. The main popular parts of it that go up into like Pennsylvania, that's right below New York State. And eastern Pennsylvania, like if you look at the shape of New York State, there's a flat south to east border, on the bottom of it, kind of like a little north of New York City. And that's Pennsylvania underneath there. And eastern Pennsylvania is a hotbed of activity. Those areas that I was describing in Kerhonkson, with the trackway and the log got pushed down and where I got escorted out of the area. In that area, in Kerhonkson is right above eastern Pennsylvania. It's just a different state.
Yeah, and Bigfoot don't see state lines.
What?
Sure. It's like there's plenty of food out there for anything, man. I've seen porcupines just hanging out of the trees, and the amount of people that hunt compared to the amount of food that could sustain something like that.
Absolutely.
I think there's a good amount of them, family groups down there, and then other family groups up in that other creek area I was talking about.
I think you guys have more Bigfoot than most. What?
We might, Whitehall, New York, a little south of the Adirondacks, is a hot spot for a long time. You guys have heard of Whitehall, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That's far away from me, but it's still in a populated area.
Right. Yeah.
Area, whatever. But I think that these things are closer to humans than we would think. They might have something to do with remnants of, manipulation that the Bible talks about.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible they could be leftovers from the Nephilim, and not maybe the Nephilim, but ancestors of them. But I thought because, and I'm sure you guys have heard a little bit about this, the wild people in the Smoky Mountains and different areas, like feral people, basically.
Yes.
Right.
And the one I haven't really delved into it, but I heard a couple encounters to where the person described somebody that was maybe third generation or fourth generation feral person, and it was like a naked guy that basically they saw on top of this waterfall, and his face it had a little issues, like there was some inbreeding going on.
Yeah.
The person described this man's face, but they also described that he was naked, but from the waist down he had really thick hair, thick for a human being. Wasn't covered maybe like a Sasquatch, but this person swears, that's the encounter that I heard, that this person said that this man was basically very hairy from the waist down, because it's possible that that person lived its whole life in the wilderness, and maybe its father and mother did too. So this isn't really what I believe about what the Sasquatch are, but I think it's an interesting theory, but I really don't tend to believe it. But what if groups of people, for whatever reason, around the world, different places, Russia, Australia, the United States, Canada, let's say 10,000, 20,000, 25,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, who knows, decided to go off and not use technology and live in the wilderness, would they become, after so many generations, would they become more robust? Maybe their brow ridge a little more tougher to fight other animals? Would they start getting bigger? And the Sasquatch seem to have the same hands that we have. They have the same feet. A lot of encounters, they have the same faces. They have humor. They have anger. They have personality. They have language. They have way too many things, I think, to just say that it's some kind of an ape or a primate. Like we've heard, different people saying, like, yeah, there would be one in a zoo right now. There would be one.
I've said that.
There would be a dead body. Like,
yeah, you'd find them. I mean, if they were just some, if they were some more primitive primate or ape, like they'd be got by now. I don't know what they are, and I think that'll be what we'll end on for the tonight.
Yeah,
is what do you think? What do you think Bigfoot is? And like we say on the show all the time, there's such thing as a Bigfoot expert. Your guess is as good as mine. If you've been doing this 30 years, you just started last week, your guess is a guess. Like, we don't know until there's one laying on a slab.
Right.
But I don't think it's a Gigantopithecus. I think we would have found Gigantopithecus were massive herbivores.
Yeah.
And they were very much of not caring about being sought, like kind of like some gorilla populations. But no, go ahead. I want to know what you think Bigfoot is.
Well, it's funny you bring up Gigantopithecus, because you would know as an educated somebody that worked in the biological field and stuff, that the different evidences for Gigantopithecus. But what I heard is that porcupines would bring their molars into caves, and they found the molars in caves in China, and that's like the only physical evidence is the molar. Is that
jaw
right?
bones, there's some pieces of skull, and we've had a handful of fragmented larger bones. Yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing as far as, actual like a full skeleton of a massive animal. And like you said, they used to say they were dragon's teeth. And the Chinese medicine doctors would actually go and collect them out of these caves and grind them up for medicine, saying that there's this dragon powder. But yeah, like you said, there's nothing huge. I mean, some of the best we have, just like, I think our biggest piece of a Gigantopithecus is just like right here. And as everybody at home, I'm showing like just kind of the edge of your skull.
The front of your
above
skull.
your mouth,
lobe.
above your eye. But there's not like, for how massive they were, there's just nothing left of them. And like you said, porcupines and, some rodents absolutely love eating bones. People that hunt for deer sheds, the squirrels are their biggest problem, because a squirrel will eat a brand new shed in like a couple weeks. One squirrel.
Yeah.
let alone a whole bunch of squirrels.
Getting them deer antler steroids.
There's no bot. Yeah, but no, go ahead. So yeah, estimates on Gigantopithecus wild verily. It's like everything from 8 foot tall to 14 foot tall is kind of the upper end, to walking on 4 legs like a gorilla or an orangutan, and being able to kind of stand up, to being more erect and actually being able to walk around and stand up. If the bigger estimates could stand up, they'd be 14 to 16 foot tall. And, that's putting their hands on the Sasquatch like it's a little kid. That's a massive animal. I mean, they just were, if they were that big, they were huge. But their lower estimates are still in Bigfoot size range, or massive
still
animals,
huge.
And we have, like you said, just little chunks of them.
Yeah, it almost seems like there's more, by far, it almost seems like there's more evidence of Sasquatch than there is of Gigantopithecus.
You might be right.
I could see that,
I mean, anecdotal, a lot of it's anecdotal. Were they giants, maybe giant human beings, a Gigantopithecus? I don't know, but I really do believe the biblical narrative, in a lot of ways, I think that does actually connect a lot of dots. And my biggest question, and no one has to answer this, but maybe everyone could just think about it. The biggest question for me, what it comes down to is, did God create the Sasquatch? Because if not, then there's only one other
it's not
creature,
good.
who could have created it, right? But does that mean that they're evil, or they're just remnants of this misguided
yeah. They're an abomination, not of their own creation.
Yeah, an abomination. But the Bible does say to preach the word to every creature.
Right.
The word of God. And I think that's interesting. So does that leave room for salvation for the Sasquatch? Could there be salvation for them?
I think so.
Let's bring a Bible
I think
next
so,
Bigfoot
maybe.
walk.
There we go. Yeah, start preaching to the Bigfoot.
What if it sits down and is like, I've been waiting to hear it. Well, like they talk about some of the fallen angels, realizing the mistakes and stuff like that, and not being able to reconnect with the Father.
What if the Sasquatch bring out, like you start, and they bring out like the real Bible, like the OG?
I thought you were going to talk about like Jehovah's Witnesses. And, they bring out their version.
Yeah. No, they have like an OG one that's like, the first version from, I don't know, the old days.
Yeah, well, they're definitely.
If the Sasquatch or Jehovah's Witnesses, they're going to be coming knocking at your door.
Yeah, we know
we just did a story today on an episode about them banging on your windows.
Oh, yeah.
They bang on windows instead.
They would be.
They can't fit on the porch.
They would make great, door-to-door salesmen, in a flash.
Jehovah's Witnesses. You have a minute to talk about your Lord and Savior?
I guess so.
You're the whole doorway.
Yeah.
What if I say no?
Right.
Nobody says no.
Right.
Come in.
It'd be a little more convincing, right?
No, I'm with you that there's, you can ask Jay, and you've heard it, and by everybody at home, my opinion on Sasquatch probably changes with the week, as it should, with more information coming in, and we've been lucky and blessed enough to have dozens, if not hundreds, of reports come in of people sharing their experience with Sasquatch, and it's just hard. I'm a big believer that Sasquatch is probably 3 different things. I that's just kind of what I fall into it. But
let's hear it, man.
I mean, I'm a big one that there's maybe a flesh and blood, like ancient hominid, so very intelligent, like you said, basically a wild man, to where they're out there existing off of nature. They're not a gorilla. They're not an orangutan. They're a human, just maybe a much more basal human. Then there's I'm with you with whether it's demonic, whether it's Nephilim creation, whether it's, the kids of the Nephilim themselves running around. And like you said, they may not be good, bad, indifferent. They may be their own things. Are we our parents, our creator's choice? No. Well, God gave us free will to do whatever. We can be bad, we can be good. Doesn't speak anything about that. And then I'm a big believer with the third thing would be more like the Fae or the elementals, where they're wearing this, essentially a costume around of a Sasquatch. But yeah, that's kind of my 3. And I think you're Like we talk about Scandinavian Bigfoot, quote unquote, like creatures. They could very well easily be Nephilim or Nephilim's kids. You know, they're much more giant-like than some of our North American Bigfoot encounters. You know, they're very much exaggerated human features, huge, but very, very intelligent. You know, we did our, I think it was a main show episode, Trolls episode, Scandinavian Trolls or Scandinavian Bigfoot. They would come into town, and there's tons and tons of murals and stuff of this talking about this. There's a lot of these trolls in the mountains, these giants in the mountains would come down once or twice a year, and they would trade ore for cheese and wine. And the people wouldn't freak out around them and stuff like that. You know, it was common. Like, you know, like there was 5-6 giants living in the mountains. Each one of them would come down once or twice a year to trade a big, you know, cart of ore for the, you know, goods the humans were making. And it was, you know, an easy truce. But, you know, when you went into one of their territories, if you gave them something that was easy, you know, they would eat you. They would talk about, but that's only for trespassers kind of deal. I don't know. What do you think, Jay? What's Bigfoot?
I don't know what Bigfoot is, but I think we should team up with Bigfoot, we the people, and use him to fight back against tyranny and oppression.
The government, the IRS.
Yeah, I think that we would be one good hell of a team together, and I think we might need to start moving in that direction.
We should, you know, we could launch them into space and they could take over the space program because they're a lot more hardy for that several G's, you know, that it takes to get up there or whatever.
I can definitely withstand the G's.
Right, and they're probably not going to lie about it, right? If they get up there and they're like, the government guys are like, listen, guys, we got everybody fooled about space. You're just going to have to lie to everybody and, you know, we'll give you all this stuff. Just say that that you had a great time and you were up there. They're probably not going to BS us.
Yeah, they're not going to fall in line. They're not sheep.
You know what would happen is they tell you the truth, right?
Yeah.
And it would be...
They'll get to the truth.
We got up there, Earth was round, space was flat.
Turn your mic off.
I'm just saying.
Turn your mic off. You deserve it.
You'd have to believe that if Bigfoot said it. Like,
well,
Earth is round, space is flat.
If Bigfoot said it, I would. Until then...
All right.
It could be. You know, I'm into all this weird stuff, right? So throughout the years, it's funny because, I mean, we're all kind of into it, right? Conspiracy, this and that, Bigfoot. But it's funny because I don't believe the Loch Ness Monster exists. But when it comes up with my buddies, right, because everybody always gives you the Bigfoot keychain and the this and that.
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't want to hear too much about it, but they'll give you the little magnet on Christmas or whatever. But I always say, now I don't totally believe this, but I always say that I don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster when it comes up. Just so there's that one thing that everybody's like, and all my friends are always like, what? You don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster, man? Come on, Nessie. And they're always so shocked. And it's not that I actually don't believe in it. You know, I don't really look too much into that. But I just need that one thing that I'm like, no. Just to surprise everyone.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like, I don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster. Like, you really? You don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster?
It's that curveball.
You gotta keep everybody on their toes.
Everyone needs that pitch in their pocket, you know?
All right.
Yep.
I don't want to cut you off, but I do have to go.
Yeah, it's been a long one.
Well, something changed during the episode.
Oh, okay.
That my time got shortened up.
All right.
So, Stonebender, I want to thank you for coming on. Once again, we'll plug all of your Instagram and that kind of stuff into the description below. Please hire this man to come do your stonework, whether in New Zealand or Australia. You know, as long as you write a big enough check, he will be there to do it, and
Absolutely.
it will look amazing.
The check is big enough. But what I'll do also is I'll try to get those pictures on my Instagram, but I'll definitely try to send them to you guys through the email maybe or something if I can figure it out. You know, and I got to say, man, I am totally honored to be on your show. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys, man. You know, I listen to you.
Thank you.
In the morning before work, different times, you know, and you know how it is with podcasts. If you're listening to somebody for a long time, you know, you're like, man, it feels like, you know, my buddy, you know, I pop it on and these guys are going back and forth. And, you know, I think you guys are solid dudes, man. And I'm very glad and very, very happy to see, Justin, that you have a family now with your baby.
Babies,
and I'm happy that anytime I see that with younger people, I'm always very encouraged, and again, I'm just real happy to be on the show. I really appreciate it. I love your podcast, and I hope you I wish you all the luck in the future with your podcast. You guys have a bright future ahead of you, man.
Thank you.
Both of you do. Any platform that you choose to, utilize, I feel. I definitely think that this could be something that is career material. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you. We better stop there before I start crying.
Yeah, don't cry, man. But I know people are loving it. I know people listen on other podcasts and other platforms that I might not necessarily have. It's not just YouTube, but I would encourage you guys to spread out and keep doing what you're doing, man. It's a very unique perspective, especially Justin, when you have an episode where it's very like science heavy, and then you go into your different theories, and you guys are, you're asking Jay, going back and forth with Jay about anything that you talked about from the first part of the podcast. I think that's a great formula, and it's so educational and entertaining. I'm very happy to hear that it's like clean for kids to listen to and stuff like that. And your introductions are hilarious, and your banter is second to none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, you know how we like to end it here. We're going to count down from 3, and we're all going to scream bye into the microphone, and the outro will start playing. You ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to Cryptids the Corn podcast. Remember, the best way to support the show is share it with a friend. But if you are craving more of the J clones
And more from Mr. E.
there's always extra content on Patreon.
And our paid member space on cryptidsofthecorn.com.
We'll catch you next time with more exciting, fun, and informative information. Bye.